The first place to start our visual inspection is inside the truck. Let's go ahead and start it up. I want to turn our blower on high, turn our temperature control on max cold, have our vent location that's coming out the center vents, and then turn on our AC switch. Okay, we know that the air is blowing out the right location. The next thing we want to do is also put a thermometer in our vent, check and see what the temperature is of the air coming out of the vent. Okay, right now, if the air was not blowing out the right location, you might have a problem with the mode door. If it wasn't blowing at all, you might have a problem with the blower motor. And if that's the case, this would be a good time to go ahead and look at your information. Or you can log on to alldatadiy.com for the information on your specific vehicle. Well, everything looks fine here. We've got a problem underneath the hood. Okay, we want to start our underneath the hood inspection first by looking at the compressor clutch. We'll make sure the compressor clutch is engaging, and which it is. You can see where it's coming on. Okay, I'll tell you what, everything looks fine here. It's time to go ahead and shut down the truck and take a closer look at everything. Okay, now that we have our engine off, we can continue on with our visual inspection. We want to go back to the compressor. We already know that the compressor clutch works because we saw it cycle on and off. But you want to take a good look at this clutch hub to make sure it hasn't been excessively hot. If so, there's a chance that it might be slipping. What would cause it to slip is if you would have a problem with the circuit coming to the clutch coil. Ours looks good. Something else to keep in mind is also check the wiring harness. Check all the connectors, make sure they're plugged in properly, make sure the wiring harness hasn't been chafed against anything, and everything looks fine here. Okay, our belt. Tell you what, the condition of our belt looks like it's in really good shape. Let's take a look at the accumulator. We have the two fittings on the accumulator. We want to just check for any signs of leakage. Anytime it leaks the refrigerant, it can leak the compressor oil, so it'll leave like an oily film on it. That looks nice and dry. We want to follow this line back around the back of the engine and coming over here. There's something else to keep in mind. A lot of times on this line, this hose assembly, there'll be a bracket attached to the hose to the firewall. A lot of times that can wear into the hose. We don't have a bracket on this, so we're good. So we come up here and check the crimp, like all the welds, all the O-ring connections. Everything looks fine on top here. We need to go ahead and check the condenser. To check the AC condenser, what we want to do is take our flashlight and take a real good look at the core. Okay, what we're looking for, any signs of oil, like leakage from the refrigerant. And also, while we're at it, we're checking for it to make sure any of the fins are bent over, see if there's excessive amount of debris there. All those will hamper the way that the condenser works and affect our AC operation. Tell you what, by looking at this one here, it doesn't look too bad. There's a little bit of debris, but that's to be expected. Something else to keep in mind on our truck here, we have a lot of area here for the air to go into the condenser to help cool it off. But on some vehicles, there's no grill at all. What they'll have is an air dam, or they'll have an air deflector. They'll help guide the air up into and through the condenser, make sure that that's in place and not cracked or broken. Tell you what, on our visual inspection, that's about as far as I can go on this. We still have the evaporator, but it's mounted into the box. I really can't get to it to see it. So what I need to do now is hook the gauge setup to this and find out exactly what we've got. One of the most important diagnostic tools you can have is a good gauge set. We want to connect our gauge hoses to our system. What we have two different sizes. As you can see, we've got the low side and the high side, basically the red and the blue. The blue would be the low side's smaller. Let's go ahead and connect it. There's the low side, and then there's our high side. There, just like that. Okay, that's what I thought. I can tell by looking at the gauge readings, we're almost not quite 80 psi on both gauges. That's telling me that I do have a leak. I was expecting the gauge to be more about 120, 125 psi, so I am low on refrigerant. Let's take a look at some of the gauge readings and what they mean. The first reading you want to take with the gauges is with the engine off. This reading indicates whether the system is charged. If the reading is 0 on both sides, you know the system is completely empty and you likely have a serious leak. If you see this reading, you probably find obvious indications of a system leak. If the initial readings with the engine off appear considerably higher than 100 to 150 pounds, you could have an overcharged situation. A system with too much refrigerant will run at the wrong pressures and will not adequately cool. If the initial readings appear normal, the next step is to start the engine and turn the AC blower switch to max. Your gauge readings will vary slightly by application, but in general, they will be about 20 to 30 pounds on the low side and 200 pounds on the high side. You can sell a service manual for specifics for your vehicle. Most vehicles today use a clutch cycling switch. When the clutch is disengaged, the low side reading will steadily rise and the high side reading will steadily fall. This is normal. Just make sure the clutch has been running for a few seconds before taking the reading. These gauge readings show the same pressure on both sides of the system while the engine is running and the AC is on max. This can indicate a fully open expansion valve or a faulty orifice tube, or more likely a faulty compressor or clutch. These gauge readings indicate an extremely low pressure on the low side and extremely high pressure on the high side. This could indicate a faulty compressor, but more likely it's a problem with the orifice tube or the expansion valve. We can tell by our gauge readings we know we're low on refrigerant. Next, we need to determine where that leak is. And now, one nice way to do that is we can put a UV leak detection dye right into the system. To add our UV dye, we'll take off our gauge low side hose. Now we can connect our UV dye right to the low side service port. Once the dye is in there, what we want to do is leave the AC on high, let it run for about 30 minutes, and then we can shut it off, take our UV light, and we've got some special UV glasses. We're going to go around all the hoses, all the connections, see if we can pinpoint where that leak is. Okay, I'll tell you what, I've pinpointed the leak. I've got a leak right at the body of the compressor. To repair that, we're going to need to replace the compressor assembly. You know, if it had been as simple as like where the line manifold attached to the compressor seals right there, if the seal would be leaking, we just replace the seals. I've also checked the lines here on top that I can get to, and I don't see any other leaks. So it looks like the only thing we really have here is the AC compressor. As with any job, to do it right, you'll need the right tools. The nice thing is the jobs we'll be covering today don't require a large, expensive assortment. In case where a specialty tool is required, be sure to check with AutoZone's Loan a Tool program. They have many specialty tools that can help you complete your job a lot quicker and easier. The very first thing you almost have to have in order to properly diagnose the system is a gauge set. You will also need your basic hand tools, a socket set, screwdrivers, an assortment of pliers, snap ring pliers, and a flashlight should be sufficient. If you have a noise you're trying to find, a good stethoscope can be a handy tool to have. And a vent thermometer is useful if you want to get an accurate reading of the AC temperature. You'll also need to get an air compressor to properly flush the system. If you don't have a compressor, you should pay a shop to flush the system for you. It's a step you don't want to skip.
Be cautious when working under the hood. If the engine has been running, components will be extremely hot, so be careful what you touch. When working around a running engine, it is important to be alert and never wear loose clothing or a necktie that can get tangled in belts, pulleys, or the fan.
Be cautious when working with refrigerant. If refrigerant is discharged from a can, a hose, or component, it is very cold and can cause skin injury. Never try to add refrigerant to the high side of the system. If you have to lift the vehicle,
never work under it until it has been secured with wheel blocks and securely positioned on jack stands. A hydraulic jack alone is never enough. Be cautious when working with oils and chemicals. Many are damaging to the groundwater environment and toxic to people and animals. Never drain or pour chemicals into the ground or sewer systems. Local municipalities and counties offer resources for proper disposal. And always remember to wear your safety glasses.
AutoZone. Get the entire DVD for this repair and all other procedures covered in the Complete Car Care series at your local AutoZone store.